Having some kind of belief is an interesting practice, an interesting cognitive state, really. There's many things that I believe, and there's lots of things that I know other people believe that I don't, and I suspect there's lots of things I believe that other people don't. And some of those beliefs seem to be evidenced very, very quickly on a moment-to-moment basis. I believe there is ground in front of me, and I seem to be acquiring the evidence of that with every step that I take. I also believe that the sound I can hear is an aeroplane in the distance. I don't have any direct evidence for that. So there's something of an act of faith going on there, but it's not. I think the evidence is quite strong. I also have a belief in the existence of planets that I can't see. I don't have any direct evidence for those, nor have I ever had any direct evidence for those. But I do have evidence that the sources of that information are reputable. So, the belief seems to occupy a number of different regions there. I am curious what this thing, this object, these objects of belief, these facts, if you like, that exist in my mind, what role they play and what their ontology might be. I mean, certainly they seem to have. I certainly don't check every single fact that presents itself to me. I don't doubt the evidence of my eyes as I'm walking through these trees here. I don't feel the need to touch every tree to confirm it with one of my other senses, or get somebody else in to confirm that I'm actually seeing what I appear to be seeing. So I do take on faith a lot of things. So the belief at that level certainly is self-evident, if you like. Some other beliefs, like the ones I've mentioned, again, I don't spend my time fact-checking. They just exist as kind of knowledge objects in my mind, as relatively solid knowledge objects. The existence of the planets, with the exception of Pluto, of course, which is no longer a planet apparently, but the existence of the object used to be called Pluto. The artist formerly known as Pluto. I have no doubt the object exists, really. I suppose I should have some doubt, but I don't really. I work as if that's the case. So these objects, these belief objects, they seem to be kind of placeholders for a set of evidential processes, evidence gathering processes, which have been carried out either by myself or someone else, and which I no longer feel the need to repeat. I just maintain this object of belief in my mind somehow. And I believe there's some sort of neurological support for this. I think Sam Harris, actually, the author, Glenda Faith was involved in that. This idea, this tracking of the neurological pathways associated with belief. But, okay, so these objects of belief which I'm holding in my mind as firm facts, let's say, it seems to me possibly they have some relationship to epistemic actions I've spoken of before, in which the cognitive workload is shifted to, well, in the case of true epistemic actions, it's shifted outside of the body, possibly in the form of movements, but also in the form of symbols. So mathematical symbols are kind of epistemic actions that allow one to continue thinking without using the actual neuronal mechanisms in the brain. But the thought process is partially outsourced. So it seems that belief has some relationship to that. Actually, I think there's a tie-in now. I'm thinking about how an analogy for this idea of belief. I'm thinking about how you go about carrying out the addition of long numbers. If you write long numbers down and you want to add up the long numbers, you start from the units and add up the units. And if that sum of the units comes to more than 10, you write the last digit at the bottom, then you carry over the larger number and carry it over to the column ahead, tens column in that case, or the hundreds column. And then when you move up and you add up the next line of digits, the tens column, and you get to this number at the bottom that you've carried over, you don't go back and check to see if that's correct. You take that number there at the bottom as a belief, if you like, as a kind of epistemic, as a result of an epistemic action in which the authenticity, the truth status of it is assumed. So that number at the bottom is kind of analogous to a belief, at least in the way that I'm thinking of it right now. The problem with that, of course, is that if you haven't done your calculations right at the digits of the units column, then the number you've carried over can be significantly wrong, which means the whole calculation is off, and you end up with a very different result. So just to play out that analogy briefly, if I was to engage in some sort of evidence gathering process, or trust the evidence gathering process to someone else, I might end up with a belief that I don't feel a need to check. In fact, I might feel the need not to check. I might be very, very invested in that belief. It might exist as a very solid fact in my mind. But in the same way that I carried the number over, I might be using that belief in my further calculations of the state of the world incorrectly. I might end up with very, very different pictures of the world. I think what's brought this to mind is a documentary I was watching on television last night called Baby Bible Bashers, which is about very small children in the States and also in Brazil who were evangelical. Very powerful documentary, very convincing performances these small children gave, and a clear commitment to a faith, which coincidentally was also the faith of their parents, but it's not coincidental. But they exhibited such firm belief in that. They've carried that number over so firmly that, assuming the religion is wrong, and I believe their religion is wrong, but whether we regard it as right or wrong, that number is certainly being carried over into the next column. And I can't imagine a situation in which it would take an awful lot of effort to convince them to go back and check their calculations later on in life.